What's going on, Bottom Line viewers? It's Mitch here of the Bottom Line View, here back with another NFL video. I'm going to rank every single one of the NFL head coaching hirings of the 2018 offseason, starting at number 7, working my way all the way till the number 1 head coaching hiring of this offseason. Starting off with number 7. I'm going with Steve Wilks. Steve Wilks, 48-year-old. He's been in the NFL since 2006. He will now be taking over for Bruce Arians as the Arizona Cardinals head coach. He was just formerly the Panthers defensive coordinator for only 1 season. Now, the reason why I have Steve Wilks in last, it's not like I hate on Steve Wilks. It's not like I dislike Steve Wilks. I actually like all of these head coaches for different reasons, but Steve Wilks is the one that I have the most question marks about. He is a secondary specialist in his career. He worked in Washington and Notre Dame in college football. He worked his way to Chicago, San Diego with the Chargers, and then Carolina. He's only actually had a couple elite units as a head coach. We look at the 2006 Chicago Bears, where he was the secondary coach for that team. Obviously, you had a ton of talent. That was the Brian Urlacher year where they made it all the way to the Super Bowl, and that's kind of an outlier. He had a couple other pretty good defenses and secondaries with the Chargers in 2010, the 10th best scoring defense and the number 1 yardage defense. And then with Carolina, he had a couple good units as well in 2013 and 2015. Most recently in 2017, he led the defense and called the plays for this Carolina Panthers defense, 11th in points, 7th in yards, and was overall 18th against the pass. These are teams that were primarily good at stopping the run. They weren't necessarily great at stopping the pass, which was his strength as a head coach. So when I take all that into account, I look at all the different rankings throughout the years, only about 4 or 5 pretty good overall defenses in the past 11 plus years. He's more of a standout in terms of personality and how good of a guy he is. And sure, that's awesome and everything, but for myself, when looking at a head coach, I'm looking at a guy that can really be a difference maker in terms of scheme, in terms of play calling. And to me, Steve Wilks just really isn't that sort of guy. He has had 2 Super Bowl appearances with the Bears and with the Panthers. He does primarily run a 4-3 defense. The interesting thing about the Cardinals is that they've been a 3-4 defense for the past couple of years. The past 3 seasons, the Arizona Cardinals have actually been top 10 in yards allowed, and that they're only one of 2 teams to actually accomplish that feat in the past 3 seasons, and they've been playing a 3-4 defense. It's going to be interesting to see how they shift to a 4-3 defense, because that's what Steve Wilks likes to do. But there's a lot of question marks. I'm still a fan of the hiring. I just think it's probably the worst one out of the 7. At number 6, I have Mike Vrabel. Now, I'm a huge Mike Vrabel fan. Obviously, you guys know I'm a huge Patriots fan. And Mike Vrabel is an iconic member of the Patriots dynasty, playing linebacker, D-end for the Patriots. I love the guy as a player. As a coach, I'm not quite sold as how he will be as a head coach, and most of that has to do with the experience he's actually had to be a head coach. I actually think Mike Vrabel as an assistant has been a very solid assistant head coach, but he hasn't had time to really develop into that head coach. It's been a very short process for him to gain the head coaching position of the Tennessee Titans. I like Mike Vrabel, the personality. I like Mike Vrabel as a defensive coach, but I'm just not quite sure that he has the experience to take on a head coaching position at this point in his life and this point in his career. He was the Ohio State linebacker and D-line coach in 2011 and 2012 and 2013. He was the Texans linebacker coach from 2014 to 2016 and the defensive coordinator in 2017. He's only had 1 year of calling plays, and I know that the head coach necessarily doesn't have to call plays, but in that 2017 season as that defensive coordinator, he had a bad defense. His defense was not good in 2017. And yeah, that had to do with injuries, but that also maybe had to do with Mike Vrabel. We don't really know necessarily. Obviously, the Titans felt well enough in him that that was kind of an outlier season. But to me, that's the only season he's really been a defensive coordinator, and they were 32nd in points and 20th in yards. So I'm not quite sold on Mike Vrabel as a head coach at this point in his career. I think he has the personality. I think he's had the experience around guys like Bill Belichick, Romeo Crennel, and very good defensive coaches, but I'm not sold that he can do it at this point in time. So that's why I have him at number 6. At number 5, I have Pat Shurmur, Giants head coach. He was the Vikings offensive coordinator as well as being the Browns coach just a couple of seasons ago. Pat Shurmur has basically been the guy with the most experience out of all these head coaching candidates. He's been in the NFL since 1999. He is 52 years old. He was the Eagles' tight end, offensive line, and quarterback coach from 1999 to 2008. He then moved on to the Rams to become the offensive coordinator from 2009 to 2010. He was then the Browns head coach and probably the most recent successful head coach. And then the Eagles offensive coordinator from 2013 to 2015. And then he went on to the Vikings to become the tight end coach and the offensive coordinator. Overall, Pat Shurmur, in his career, he's already, like I said, had a head coaching opportunity in Cleveland, 10-23 overall. In the Rams, he finished 32nd and 29th in points and yards that 1 year as an offensive coordinator. That's not very good. As a part of the Eagles, he was successful, though, and actually quite impressive. And really, since that time with the Rams, as an offensive coordinator, he's been really successful. With the Eagles, he was 4th in points, 2nd in yards. Then the year later, 3rd in points, 5th in yards. And then the year later after that, 13th in points and 12th in yards. He had Nick Foles as his quarterback, Mark Sanchez and Sam Bradford in those 3 years as an Eagles offensive coordinator. And he did well with those pieces and those quarterbacks. This is also a guy in Minnesota who took multiple different quarterbacks. Sam Bradford, he took Case Keenum to the 10th overall offense and 11th yardage offense as well. Overall, Pat Shurmur knows what he's doing on the offensive side of the football. I really like his aggressive approach to the passing game. He does pretty well with offensive lines, and I think that Pat Shurmur is going to have a pretty good offense. I'm just concerned on how he's going to be on the defensive side of the ball. I'm concerned on his first go around, and I'm concerned that he's not necessarily a special coach. I feel like he's a good coordinator, but I'm not sure he's really meant to be a head coach. I'm not sure he's meant to be in that position, but it didn't work out really the first time around. Yeah, he's been a good coordinator since then, but can he make it work in New York where he's going to have a really, really steep hill to climb? At number 4, I have Frank Reich, who is the offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles. He's now taking over for the Indianapolis head coaching position. He was a member of the Colts organization for a very long time. He was an offensive assistant, a quarterback coach, and a wide receiver coach for the Colts in 2008 till 2011. Then he went to the Cardinals, became the wide receiver head coach in 2012. He went to the Chargers. He was the quarterback coach and also the offensive coordinator from 2013 to 2015. This is a guy that actually Peyton Manning really respects. So if Peyton Manning really thinks you're a smart coach and really thinks you're a good offensive coach, then that tells you that this guy is probably pretty smart and that on that side of the field. I think the Colts can definitely benefit from what he has to give with Andrew Luck. I definitely think that if Andrew Luck is ready to go, Frank Reich can bring in some different offensive schemes and some of the things that he learned from the Colts in the past and Peyton Manning, learned from Phillip Rivers in the Chargers, and obviously learned from Doug Peterson and what they've done recently with the Eagles, and then take that and form that and mold that into the Colts organization. Frank Reich did an amazing job with Nick Foles en route to a Super Bowl win. Carson Wentz in his development, he did have a couple of slumps as the Chargers offensive coordinator. He did have a year where he was pretty successful, 12th scoring and 5th in yards. But other than that, 17th and 18th, that's nothing special. 26th and 9th, that's nothing special either. So there have been blips in his career and kind of bumps in the road for Reich, but I think recently he's shown with the Eagles what he's capable of, and his experience in the Colts organization I think is definitely going to help him out. Plus, this guy is a Super Bowl champion, so you got to give it to him. At number 3, I have Matt Nagy of the Chicago Bears. Matt Nagy, I think is going to be the most interesting, intriguing hire of this offseason. He's only 39 years old. He's been in the NFL since 2008. He was an intern, assistant, and a quality control coach for the Eagles. And now he's going to be the Bears head coach. He was also the Chiefs quarterback coach from 2013 to 2015 and just recently took over as the Chiefs offensive coordinator. He was the offensive coordinator in 2016, but just recently started calling plays in 2017 because we all know Andy Reid loved to call his plays. But Nagy took over a team that was 6-5, and under Nagy, they went 4-1. They averaged 28.5 yards per game this past season with the Chiefs. I really like what Nagy has to offer as an offensive coach. Very much like what Frank Reich and Doug Peterson did in Philadelphia with the development of the RPO offense, with the development of all these different schemes, and he's very creative in what he does with quarterbacks. He upped the level of Alex Smith, and I think he got the most out of him these past couple of years. Obviously, he's learning under Andy Reid, who is one of the greatest coaches of all time, especially offensively. And Andy Reid has, in the past, put out some very successful head coaches. Ultimately, the reason why I have him at number 3 is I think he can get the most out of Mitchell Trubisky, get the most out of his ability with his legs and his arm and that combination, and get that offense going in Chicago. I also like the supporting cast that he has around him. The defensive coordinator is still there from last year for Chicago. I think Matt Nagy is really put into a good situation where he can just focus on the offense and what he does best, and I think that's why the Bears are ultimately going to find themselves a nice hire in Matt Nagy. At number 2, I have the controversial but always entertaining Jon Gruden as the Oakland Raiders head coach. Jon Gruden has a lot of experience in the NFL. Not only was he a commentator forever, but also he was a really good head coach in the NFL. He went to the Raiders to really mold one of the best offenses from 98 to 01 with Rich Gannon. He then went to the Bucks to have one of the best defenses for a number of years from 02 to 08, and he won a Super Bowl with the Bucks, of course. He finished 95 and 81 overall as a head coach in his career, 5-4 in the postseason, a Super Bowl champion, and he has the Bucks record for wins with 57. I think Jon Gruden, the biggest question I have about Jon Gruden is has the game passed him by? I know he's not old, but it's been 10 years since he's been a head coach. A lot has changed in the NFL, offensively, defensively, schematically. I know he's around the game a lot, and I know he's really studying every team and every scheme, but for me, there's that lingering issue in the back of my mind. Is he still too old school to take over in a 2018 NFL? But at the same time, you have to give to him what he's done in the past. He is a brilliant mind when it comes to quarterbacks, and I think he's going to get the most out of Derek Carr, and he's going to bring some legitimacy back to the Raiders in Oakland and then Vegas. I think Jon Gruden is going to be a good hiring for the Raiders. A little expensive, but good nonetheless. At number 1, I have my boy, Matt Patricia. Now, Matt Patricia, I know he had a terrible defensive performance in the Super Bowl, but quite honestly, I think a lot of that has to fall on not only Bill Belichick, but also I think it has to fall on the defensive actual personnel that he had to work with in New England. I don't think Matt Patricia, at 43 years old, has gotten enough respect for what he's been able to do in New England with some of the limited talent that he's had to work with as the defensive coordinator. This is a guy that is extremely intelligent. He is a guy that I feel could become a general manager at one point. He is that smart. He is a rocket scientist. That's not a joke. He actually is a rocket scientist. He's been in the NFL since 2004. He's been an offensive assistant. He's been an offensive line coach, a linebacker coach, a safety coach, a defensive coordinator. He has a lot of different tools and versatility within his realm as a coach, and that's very impressive. He's been calling plays for New England since 2009, in arguably their most successful stretch they've ever had. Since 2009, he's actually had 8 different top 10 scoring defenses since 2009. He is a 3-time Super Bowl champion. He has a very hybrid, versatile defense where he can have a 4-3 defense, he can have a 3-4 defense. Pairing him up with Quinn in Detroit, a guy that knows the New England system, I think it's going to work out for the Lions, and this is going to be their best head coach hiring maybe in their history of Detroit football. So I really like the Matt Patricia hiring. I think it's the best hiring this offseason. I hope you guys enjoyed this video ranking the head coach hirings of the NFL 2018 offseason. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. It's Mitch of the Bottom Line View. Peace out.